All right, get this. Imagine a kid in Zimbabwe,
Right.
right? Staring up at the moon, big dreams, wants to walk on it. Classic stuff.
Uh-huh.
Now, completely flip that. France, another kid, okay, maybe not rolling in cash, but he's walking right into the country's most elite schools.
Worlds apart, you'd think.
Totally. Seems like just, light years between those starting lines. But hang on, because this deep dive,
Yeah.
it connects those dots in a pretty unexpected way.
It's fascinating, really, seeing how these incredibly different backgrounds shaped, well, everything about two guys who ended up running these huge telecom companies across continents.
Exactly. We're talking Ralph Mupita at MTN and Stéphane Richard over at Orange.
And forget the usual earnings calls for a sec. This is about how their own stories, their personalities kind of steered the ship for these massive businesses.
Right. We've looked at, tons of stuff, news, their own words, public records, and the contrast is just stark.
Yeah.
Mupita, the moon dreamer, apparently gets told point blank, Africans don't go to the moon.
Huh.
Just like that.
Ouch. That's got to sting.
Talk about a reality check.
Yeah.
But it seems like instead of, packing it in, it lit some kind of fire under him.
And then you have Richard coming up through that very French, very elite system, the Grandes Écoles.
Two completely different launch pads, really, aiming for different skies almost.
Yet somehow they both land right in the middle of telecom, which is, let's face it, crucial for growth everywhere, Africa, Europe.
Absolutely. So our mission today, let's unpack that. How did those early days, those core beliefs, translate into big strategic moves at MTN and Orange?
How did these different paths lead to actually pretty similar goals? Growth, innovation, but in really diverse markets.
Okay, let's dive into Mupita first, our Zimbabwean dreamer. Even back in boarding school, apparently he had this relentless curiosity.
Always asking questions, looking ahead.
Yeah. And that moon comment, the dismissal, sounds like it wasn't about bitterness, but just pure determination, I'll show you.
Those early moments can be so powerful, can't they? But what's interesting is how that drive then gets channeled. Engineering degree, MBA from Cape Town.
Harvard, too, eventually.
Right, Harvard's general management program. These weren't just ticks on a CV. They were building blocks, weren't they? Giving him that broad view, tech know-how plus business smarts.
Totally. And then that engineer's brain pivots into finance at Old Mutual. That's a serious turn.
And he didn't just dabble. He ends up CEO of emerging markets. Think about that, running operations across Africa, Latin America, Asia.
The complexity, you can totally see how managing that prepares you for the top job at MTN. It's like the ultimate training ground.
Exactly. So when he joins MTN, first as CFO in 2017, then CEO in 2020, he's not coming in cold.
Not at all. He knows the landscape. And he's taking over after Rob Shooter, tasked with, essentially, a new direction.
And he definitely needs some changes.
Oh, yeah. Shaking things up immediately, refocusing strategy, sorting out the balance sheet, and those local listings, Nigeria, Ghana.
Those weren't small things. It was a clear signal, empowering local investment.
Yeah, a real statement.
And then that whole Ambition 2025 thing, splitting off assets, connectivity, fintech, fiber into separate units.
Like launching a fleet of speedboats instead of one giant tanker. For agility.
Precisely. Makes them nimbler, more focused on their specific areas, less bogged down.
And pulling out of markets like the Middle East to double down on Africa. That really shows his belief in the continent, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But it wasn't just numbers. There seems to be this real sense of purpose driving him.
That quote about the woman in Ghana selling baskets.
Yeah. What is stopping that lady from seeing the world as a market like Amazon does? It makes connectivity so human, relatable.
It really does. And it connects directly to pushing internet access and, of course, Momo, the mobile money platform.
Which just exploded. Huge valuation. What was it? Around $5 billion back in 2021?
Something like that. It's more than just an app. It's like vital infrastructure for millions.
And he got that tech is only one part. His focus on people, on culture. That quote again, if you don't get people and culture right, you will fail.
Shows real leadership depth, doesn't it? Actively building diverse teams, promoting women. It's like building an organization that reflects the continent.
And his attitude to failure. I love this bit.
Me too. If you are not failing, then you are not pushing the boundaries hard enough. That's how you get real innovation, surely.
And the advice. Be agile and resilient. Be prepared to learn and unlearn. That's basically the rule book for tech today.
You see the results, though. doubling down on fintech, those successful listings, even getting those massive regulatory fines reduced in Nigeria.
Yeah, negotiating those down was quite a feat. Concrete achievements.
And his personal mantra, everybody deserves the benefits of a modern, connected life. It feels genuine somehow, especially when you see him, proudly representing his African roots.
It's like that early rejection about the moon fueled this lifelong mission to connect people.
Definitely. So his style's this mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Engineering precision.
Meticulous.
But also this real focus on the end user. Obsess about the customer. Sounds like that was hammered home constantly.
A powerful combination.
Okay, so that's Mupita. Engineer, visionary, customer obsessed. Now let's hop across the med to Stéphane Richard at Orange.
Talk about a different path.
Right. Son of a mining engineer, grandson of a shepherd, grounded roots maybe, but then straight into the French elite machine. HEC Paris, ENA.
The absolute top tier. The system that produces France's, well, technocratic leadership. Very different vibe.
And his early career shows that blend. Private sector success, that Nexity buyout, showed serious business chops.
Followed by government. Chief of staff to Christine Lagarde when she was finance minister. That gives you serious political insight connections.
Invaluable, I bet. So when he joins Orange France Telecom, as it was partly known then, first as deputy CEO, then CEO in 2011, he's walking into a different kind of storm.
Oh, absolutely. Big challenges. Debt, yes, but also that awful period of employee unrest, the suicides, a really deep crisis for the company.
A heavy legacy to inherit.
Definitely. And his response to that Conquest 2015 plan, it wasn't just about the money. Yes, building out fiber networks, getting more subscribers.
But also hiring 10,000 new people. That's huge.
It was a reinvestment, wasn't it? And crucially, addressing the human side, trying to heal the company.
Yeah, changing HR, improving labor relations. Sounds like a genuine effort to create a more humane workplace.
He even held regular meetings with other European telecom CEOs, trying to set better industry standards. That's quite proactive.
And innovation was key too, right? Things like NFC mobile payments, embracing new tech early on.
Yeah, looking ahead. And then came his next big plan, Engage 2025. The focus, growth and sustainability. Those two words kept coming up.
And like Mupita, he saw massive potential in Africa and the Middle East, calling Orange MEA the reference digital operator. That's a big statement.
It is. And again, mobile money. He clearly saw it as proof of Africa's digital leapfrogging.
Orange money expanded hugely under him, didn't it? Millions of users, loads of countries by 2019.
Tens of millions, yeah. And that Mawali partnership with MTN, now that's fascinating.
Right. Fierce rivals teaming up.
To create this joint platform for mobile payments across Africa, it shows they both saw the bigger picture, didn't they? The need for interoperability, a universal means of payment.
Beyond just company borders. And Richard, like Mupita, seemed to have this strong social conscience baked in.
Definitely. Digital inclusion, training programs, subsidized access. It felt like more than just CSR box ticking.
And those environmental goals. Net zero by 2040. That's ambitious. Shows a real commitment to sustainability alongside growth.
His style seems different too. Polished, maybe more outgoing, persuasive with investors, with unions.
Patient but persistent, I read somewhere, which you'd need steering a ship like Orange.
Especially through crises, network outages, legal issues, he apparently kept a cool head, focused on the long term, kept investing, especially in Africa.
And Orange MEA grew significantly under his watch, reached 125 million customers by 2019.
Yeah, significant growth. So that summary, growth and sustainability, really seems to capture his balancing act. Profit, yes, but with purpose.
And setting up that dedicated Africa-Middle East HQ in Casablanca, that's a strong signal of commitment, being closer to the market.
Absolutely.
So looking back at their legacies, it's interesting how they both built on but also reacted against their predecessors.
Right. Mupita took Nyaleko's expansionist drive, but added this focus on sustainability, fixing some older issues.
While Richard followed Britain's cost-cutting era by bringing back, maybe, more empathy and that longer-term vision.
Culturally, they both left a big footprint, too. Mupita really leaning into MTN's Pan-African identity, pushing inclusivity.
And Richard working to position Orange as this responsible corporate citizen, focusing on transparency and social impact.
And in Africa, you see the impact. MTN driving fintech with Momo, building infrastructure under Mupita.
And Orange investing heavily in networks, those community programs under Richard. And Mawali, that joint venture, shows they both valued making things work across the continent.
Yeah, interoperability was key. In terms of reach, MTN probably has more subscribers overall.
But Orange has a really strong growing presence, especially with 4G. in many key African markets.
So the lessons. From Mupita, you get this incredible story of perseverance, vision, leading with values.
And from Richard, it's that blend, driving growth, but making social and environmental responsibility central to the strategy, not just an add-on.
And their own words kind of sum it up, don't they? Mupita, be agile, be resilient, be prepared to learn and unlearn.
Richard, the story of Orange's new plan is therefore a story of sustainable growth. Pretty clear philosophies.
Yeah. Now, it's important for you listening to remember this is all based on what's out there publicly. News, statements, public records.
Right. We can't know every single internal detail or closed-door conversation. That's just the nature of this kind of analysis.
Fair enough. But even so.
Even so, the contrast between Ralph Mupita and Stéphane Richard, where they started, where they ended up, it paints this really vivid picture, doesn't it? How personal journeys shape huge companies and impact whole continents.
Absolutely. So the takeaways for you. Well, think about how much individual experiences can steer the direction of massive organizations. It's not just spreadsheets.
And consider that constant balancing act between pushing for growth and ensuring things are sustainable, responsible.
And also the power of leading with clear values, especially in these complex global markets we see today.
So maybe something to chew on as you go about your day. Think about leaders you know or follow. How have their early lives, their challenges, maybe shaped how they lead now?
And what could that tell us about what's next? You know, for innovation, for competition, not just in telecom, but anywhere, really.
Maybe this deep dive got you thinking more about mobile money's future in Africa, or perhaps just the role personality plays in leadership generally. Hopefully it's given you a good starting point for understanding that human element behind the big business stories.